this is my 21.1. So, the external environment plays a key role in elite athletes' lives. They compete in a wide range of climates because they're participating in competitions all over the world. So, for instance, in the Beijing Olympics, the a common temperature was around, well, to reach over 30 degrees, whereas in London, the London Olympics, 22 degrees was standard. So athletes really need to learn how to compete in different temperatures. So fortunately, the body has loads of mechanisms to help us do this. So during exercise, athletes must keep their internal temperature 37 degrees to avoid hypothermia, which is overheating, or hypothermia, which is getting too cold. The process of keeping the body's temperature constant is called homeostasis. So naturally, the body's temperature does fluctuate, however only very slightly. So 37 degrees is the ideal because this is when enzymes work most efficiently. Enzymes are biological catalysts, which means they speed up chemical reactions. So at 40 degrees, they denature, which means they stop working because the temperature has gotten too high. So the shape of the active site has changed. Right, so the hypothalamus is located in the brain and it's the site of the thermoregulatory centre, which means it controls and regulates the body's temperature with a number of different mechanisms. It has a greater blood supply than any other brain structure and it contains central thermal receptors. So this means that it can detect changes in the blood, which can stimulate temperature control. There are also thermal receptors found in the skin, which are called peripheral receptors, and they send signals to the hypothalamus. The thermal neutral zone is known as the optimal temperature range, where the body is in equilibrium. And its it's when temperature remains constant. So this is known as the norm. But if the external environment becomes too hot or too cold, the body is going to gain or lose heat respectively. So this is going to cause a deviation from the norm level. So if you're too hot, your body's going to cool down by using mechanisms to do that, and then it will need to heat up again, so it'll use more mechanisms to heat it up because it's too cold. So that's known as negative feedback. Signals are sent to the hypothalamus to lose heat. So blood vessels will vasodilate. This is when blood vessels widen to allow for a larger surface area so that heat can be transmitted through. The blood sent to the skin surface away from the core organs. You will lose sweat. You will also lose heat from sweat through evaporation. If the external temperature is too cold and the body is losing heat, it's going to start shivering. So shivering is fast muscle contraction, which generates heat. Also, blood vessels are going to vasoconstrict to reduce heat loss and blood flow around the skin surface. In this instance, the blood is saturated around the vital organs, so the skin is separated by a layer of fatty tissue from the organs, which insulates them. So heat loss is reduced. Hairs are also going to stand upright on your arm, for instance, to try and trap air. Prolonged blood restriction from the skin can be a problem because skin cells might become oxygen deprived, which could cause frostbite. So heat input is where extra heat's added to your body, and it can occur internally or externally. Internally is via the process of digestion or exercise. This because it requires both require muscle contraction and that generates heat. External heat input can occur via conduction, so this is the transfer of heat from one object to another through direct contact, and radiation, so this is the transfer of radiant energy as heat waves or particles. Heat output is when heat is taken away from the body. So this can occur through conduction, radiation, evaporation, which is conversion of liquid into vapour. So in a sporting instance, it would be sweat, and respiration, which is emission of waste gases and water vapour via the respiratory system. So for homeostasis to occur, the heat input has to be equivalent to the heat output. So, hot and humid conditions can cause issues within the heat loss process, making it ineffective and resulting in hyperthermia. So, a core temperature of 40 plus increases the metabolic rate. So, this increases heat production. Conditions such as heat stroke can occur when the body cannot cool itself down due to external temperature, especially if you've done exercise previously. So it might be fatal. There is that chance. The skin becomes hot and dry, and organ damage can occur. So to avoid this, the body must be cooled. You've got to drink cool water, or go into an air-conditioned or shady area, and you've got to stop doing the exercise. So you've got some people that are more at risk of getting heat stroke than others, such as athletes and people that live in hot climates, but it can affect anyone. Symptoms include excessive sweating, nausea, dizziness, hyperventilation, dehydration, right? That's when your water output exceeds the water input, so your body is in negative fluid balance, and this can cause reduced blood plasma levels, because blood plasma is usually 90% water. So this results in blood volume to be too small to cope with its normal cardiovascular function. In high external temperatures, you've got about 60% of athletes' cardio output and pass through skin for cooling as sweat production. So to avoid this, an adequate supply of water must be consumed, so exercise must be stopped again. If you have lost too much water through perspiration, this can also upset your electrolyte balance, resulting in salt depletion. So too much heat reduces performance levels, body temperature rises, and then blood goes to the skin, and then the body starts to sweat. Intense exercise can cause athletes to reach up to 39 degrees with a muscle temperature slightly higher, and exercise is hard because of the body and the muscles, they're competing for the blood because O2 is more in demand, so you've got circulatory demand as well. Oxygen is also needed for the cooling process, and there's less available to the athlete's performance and their organs. So there's quite a few issues in that. So a cool temperature. So in contrast, this is hypothermia. So hypothermia occurs when the body's temperature is too low because heat loss is greater than heat production. It results in a reduction in breathing, blood pressure and heart rate, which also causes drowsiness. You can be confused, confusions cause slurred speech, you get that too. If the body reaches 24 degrees Celsius, it can be fatal. You're likely to suffer cardiac arrest, which will cause your death. Hypothermia fits into three categories. So you've got immersion. This is when the body is immersed into icy water, which causes severe cold stress. You've got exhaustion. So this is when the body experiences wet and windy conditions. The cold stress is less severe than immersion. And you've got urban. So this is less common with athletes, but it's associated with elderly people. The body experiences prolonged but relatively mild weather conditions. So that's that. When athletes are exposed to cold conditions, their hypothalamus does involuntary responses, which I talked about earlier. So this is shivering and the vascular adjustment. If it drops below 32 degrees Celsius, shivering's likely to terminate and the athlete actually feels comfort. But if it carries to go down, then it will cause death. So to treat a person with this, they must be moved to a warm place, like wet clothes must be removed and replaced by more layers to trap heat. A cold athlete's more at risk than a hot athlete because they're going to have other issues such as torn tendons and their muscles are likely to tear as well. The highest risk is hypothermia, because blood is shunted away from the body's extremities to minimise heat loss and maintain the core temperature, so that can cause frostbite. And moderate hypothermia causes fatigue, poor coordination, numbness and disorientation. Thanks.